Hello everybody, I hope you're having a wonderful day and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the Donkey Kong games that came post Rare's buyout by Microsoft. A bit of a disclaimer before we get started. I'm going to be talking about some games today that are actually well received and pretty well loved by a lot of people. I'm going to be looking at these games critically from the point of view of a fan who grew up with the Donkey Kong Country series as made by Rare, and that's pretty much where I'm at with it. Just because I don't like these games, don't mean that they're bad games by any stretch, and they're not. They're actually pretty good games, but personally, I just have my qualms with them. So just because I don't like these games doesn't mean that if you love them, your opinion is any less valid or anything like that. It's just my shitty opinion. So try not to get too angry about it, you know? I also would like to mention that I tried to say the word bongos as many times as I could in this video. So if you want to, why don't you count along and see how many times I say it? So with that out of the way, let's get into it. Microsoft purchased Rare in September of 2002 after a bidding war with Nintendo and Activision of all companies. Upon winning the bidding war, Microsoft acquired Rare and all of its original properties, while Nintendo retained the Donkey Kong license and all characters related to Donkey Kong. One day I would like to talk about Rare's purchase by Microsoft and how that all turned out, though let's just say it didn't turn out all so well. But that's a story for another day. Nintendo now had full license over the Donkey Kong series, and DK was coming off of the N64 and Donkey Kong 64, which, while the game was polarizing in the community, it did sell really well, and after impressive sales, it certainly looked like Donkey Kong was still the top franchise that it had been since the SNES. So you figure, after a platform hit, Nintendo had a juggernaut on their hands. So you figure Donkey Kong's entry on the Nintendo GameCube was going to be something amazing, right? Nope. Say hello to Donkey Konga, a bongo rhythm game made for the Nintendo GameCube that features the Donkey Kong license. This game was made by Namco in partnership with Nintendo and was modeled after Namco's arcade game series Taiko Drum Master. But wait a minute, you can't bongo without bongos. The GameCube controller can't bongo. Exactly. Which is why Nintendo and Namco developed these fucking monsters. Enter the DK Bongos. These plastic monstrosities came with every copy of Donkey Konga. If you look throughout Nintendo's history, you'll see a bunch of different examples of Nintendo saying, hey, controllers are fun, but what if we made people buy something else? And the Donkey Kong Bongos are right on the list. So anyway, yeah, these are required for you to play Donkey Konga. Donkey Konga plays similar to any other rhythm game that you've seen. Games like Rock Band, Guitar Hero, whatever. The right bongo controls the right, the left bongo controls the left, and there's a little microphone on there that can pick up sound so you can clap. These are necessary for you to bongo along to various songs in Donkey Konga. So what kind of songs are in Donkey Konga? Well, depending on what region you lived in, you would have different tracks. If you played the Japanese version of Donkey Konga, you had a lot of songs from Japanese anime and J-pop. If you had the American or European versions of Donkey Konga, you had something a little bit different. See, Nintendo actually took it upon themselves to license out official songs for Donkey Konga, which is cool. But, good lord, are they absolutely terrible covers of popular songs. Do you love songs being sung with all the energy of a PBS Kids special? Well, you've come to the right place. Donkey Konga had an array of songs that touched everything from Happy Birthday all the way to Blink-182's All the Small Things. There were other classic songs on there like You Can't Hurry Love by the Supremes, Louie Louie by Richard Berry, The Impression That I Get by the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. And you know, I mean, they were all good songs, but oh my goodness, dude, were they so friggin' bland in Donkey Konga. Of course, you might have a hard time hearing the bland covers of songs as you try to hear them over the obnoxious sounds of synthetic bongoing that happened every time you drummed on the bongos. It worked for some songs, like We Will Rock You by Queen, because of the obviously good drum beats in the song, but for the most part, it was just super fucking obnoxious. Overall, the game was just meh for me. But it did have the Pokemon theme in it, from the cartoon, so that was actually pretty good. Nintendo would follow that up with Donkey Konga 2, which had even more licensed music on it than the first game. It was really exciting to see Donkey Kong's blank, lifeless smile as he bongoed along to such songs as It's Been a While by Stained and Headstrong by Trapped. Good lord. I guess Donkey Kong was going through his emo phase. A fun song to note that was in the European version of Donkey Konga 2 was Boombastic, a song famously sung by both Shaggy and Biggie Cheese. Do me a favor and go look up the lyrics to this song and tell me that it's not fucking hilarious that Nintendo put this in a game marketed mainly towards children. That being said, Donkey Konga would get a third game as well, in Japan only. I guess it wasn't popular enough to keep getting games in America, so to Japan it was. Overall, I wasn't a big fan of Donkey Konga when I was a kid. To be honest, if it came out alongside a Donkey Kong Country game on the GameCube, I would have probably been a lot more receptive to it. But the simple fact of the matter was that it was the first Donkey Kong game on the GameCube, and I was just extremely disappointed when it came out. Finally, though, I would get a Donkey Kong platformer on the GameCube, but it certainly wasn't the game that I had hoped it was. First of all, they brought back the bongos. That's right, Nintendo figured, hey, people just love these bongos, so they brought them back again. The bongos would become one of the biggest blights on the Donkey Kong series, in my opinion. And here they were, yet again, in the much-awaited Donkey Kong platformer that I wanted so bad, until I actually played it. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is probably going to be one of the more controversial games that I'm about to talk about, because I found out that there's quite a huge audience for this game. A lot of people really liked it, and it got a lot of good reviews back in the day, mostly because the bongos made the controls innovative and it was doing something new with a Donkey Kong platformer, yada 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 yada. Admittedly, the bongos aren't the worst part of the game for me. I don't like the fact that you have to control it with the bongos, but there was just something that was eating at me way more when it came to Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. Admittedly, you can play the game with a GameCube controller. If you hate your fucking life, let me just tell you that using a GameCube controller was terrible. The control scheme on it was trash, and I'm pretty sure Nintendo did that on purpose, so that way you would feel like you had to buy the bongos. So you may be wondering, how do you control Donkey Kong in Jungle Beat with the bongos? Allow me to give you a little description. So if you wanted to run in Jungle Beat, you had to tap one of the bongos in whatever direction you wanted to go, and that would cause Donkey Kong to run. If you held your hand on one of the bongos, he would walk. To jump, you had to hit both bongos simultaneously. And then you could also move in midair. To jump diagonally, you had to hit the bongo in the direction that you wanted to jump while you were using the other bongo to run. Yeah, sounds just as confusing as it fucking was. And then, you could clap if you wanted to do your clap attack, literally by clapping into the microphone on the bongos. But despite the fact that I hated the control scheme, that was all forgivable. You know what's not forgivable? Getting rid of everything that made Donkey Kong Country great in the first place. Yeah, the only thing to return in Jungle Beat was fucking Donkey Kong. That's right. Everything else that you remember from the original games was fucking gone. The Kong family from the original Country games? Axed. Animal Buddies? See you in hell. Kremlings? Forget about them. All of that was removed in Jungle Beat, which was a real fucking crime. And let me just tell you that all the things that replaced them were absolutely not any better. The replacements for the Kong family were these fucking helper monkeys, which looked like Boots from Dora the Explorer. Yeah, real exciting. Then of course, we did have animal buddies in the game, but instead of getting Rambi, Squawks, and Ungard, instead we got these other fuckers. A wildebeest, a generic bird, and a friggin' whale. These things literally fit the same exact roles as the original animal buddies. Why replace them? Especially animal buddies who were staples of the original games. Yes, they did switch out animal buddies in other Country titles, But Rambi, Ungard, and Squawks were pretty much always in the games. They were in every country game, but not this one. Nope, they were gone. And then finally, the Kremlings, the main antagonists of the Donkey Kong series. Were they anywhere to be found? King K. Rool and his cronies were absolutely fucking ripped out of the game, and replaced with a legion of just generic enemies. Don't get me wrong, every Donkey Kong game had generic animals that the Kongs were fighting. The original games had bees and birds and all kinds of shit. But this one, I mean, they just took it to a whole new level. Donkey Kong just meanders around this island, which were assumed is DK Isle, but who the fuck knows, and just literally beats the living shit out of every pig, bird, elephant, fish, and whatever the hell else he can get his hands on, for no good reason at all. Because there's absolutely no story. At least in the original country games, you could find the story in the instruction booklets that came with the games back in the day. But this game, nothing. There was literally no story at all. Donkey Kong, for whatever reason, was just beating the shit out of everything he came across just because he wanted to. There were villains in the game, which I'll get to in a second, but goddamn were they bad. The ultimate replacements for the Kremlings in this game were these evil fucking Kongs. Yeah, evil Kongs. What a novel idea. Rare came up with evil Kongs back in the 90s when they made the Manky Kongs, which were evil Kongs that threw barrels at DK and Diddy as they walked around the vines in different areas in the jungle, which was a callback to the original Donkey Kong arcade where he threw barrels at Mario. This time, they're just a bunch of evil fuckers, at least as far as we know they're evil. Who knows, because there's no fucking story. But Donkey Kong is beating the shit out of these guys to, I guess, I don't know, assert himself as the king of the jungle? Whatever. Either way, these Kongs were incredibly creative. Let me take a moment to highlight exactly how fucking creative these things really were. So, you had an evil Kong that had dreadlocks. Take a guess as to what his name was. Dread Kong. Then there was an evil Kong that had a karate gi on. Guess what his name was? Karate Kong. Then, of course, you had a big fat Kong who was a sumo wrestler. Why don't you take a wild guess as to what his name was? Yeah, really fucking original. Way to go, Nintendo. You really hit a fucking home run on that one. Either way, Donkey Kong gets to the ends of these levels, or kingdoms as they're called in Jungle Beat, and ends up squaring up with these assholes and fighting them in a punchies contest. And yeah, it was literally just boxing. That's all it was. You would duck or, dip underneath a punch, and then you would combo punch the shit out of these assholes. Now, don't get me wrong. The fights were pretty good. The boss battles weren't too bad, and not every single boss battle was like this. Some of the giant animals, had different mechanics, and the giant animal bosses weren't too bad. Every Donkey Kong Country game had giant animal bosses. But it was the evil Kongs that just got old really fast, especially because they just were so unoriginal. I just couldn't get into them. I mean, am I completely against evil Kongs? No, not at all. But when you replace really good villains from the original game with these, it just feels so empty and soulless. And the thing is that Jungle Beat was made by Nintendo of EAD, who are the main developers behind the Mario games. Yeah, the Mario games. The games that have been using the same fucking villains and characters for decades. So you'd think that they would throw Donkey Kong the same courtesy. But no, not at all. Instead of using the iconic characters from his series, they decide to wipe it all clean and use these generic assholes. It was a real shitty experience for me, and I just really didn't like Jungle Beat, mostly because of the atmosphere. The music in it wasn't even that good, from what you could hear of the music, when it wasn't being drowned out by, again, the synthetic fucking bongo sounds that played every time you moved with Donkey Kong. Yeah, imagine that. You're sitting there trying to play a platforming game, and all you keep hearing is just bongoing constantly with everything that you're doing. Were there some good songs in the game? Yeah, from what you could hear of them. For the most part, the entire game to me was just poor. Before I move on to the next Donkey Kong game on main consoles, I would like to touch on the Game Boy really quickly. I didn't want to focus on Game Boy too much because I mostly just wanted to talk about home consoles, but I figured I have to give a couple shout outs, and one of the games is pretty significant. So, Due to Microsoft not having any competition in the handheld market, Rare was still able to actually make some games for the Game Boy even after the buyout. And they did remake the original 3 country games from the SNES on the Game Boy Advance, as well as making a Diddy Kong Racing remake on the DS, which was pretty cool. But like I said, I didn't want to talk about them too much. When it comes to new Donkey Kong games on the Game Boy, the Donkey Kong license was handed over to a company called Payon? I don't know how you say it. But either way, they were the next company to get the Donkey Kong license. They made 2 games on the Game Boy. One on Game Boy Advance, the other one on the DS. The one was Donkey Kong King of Swing, and the other one was Donkey Kong Jungle Climber. Both of these games were puzzle climbing platformers. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion of these games because I never actually played them. I've only seen them. They are significant though for one particular thing. They were the company that was responsible for redesigning a lot of the Rare era Kong characters. So the Kremlings, King K. Rool, Funky, Cranky, Dixie, Candy, they were all there. And this company actually redesigned all the characters. Now, I do like some of the redesigns, and I'm not a big fan of some of the other ones. The redesigns, for the most part, brought a lot of these characters in line with the more Mario-esque design that you would see of the characters in other crossover games after this game came out, such as Mario Kart and whatnot. For the most part, most of the designs work fine. The only one I really don't like is King K. Rool. My goodness. Look what they did to my boy. Look what they did to my baby boy. They turned him into a fat lizard. That's all he looks like to me. Gone is his large crown and his golden belly armor, and hell, they even took his tail off. Yeah, Pound King K. Rool has an ass. He has no tail. I don't know what would push them to make this design choice. The only thing I can even fathom is that they were trying to go for a character that looked similar to the animated cartoon King K. Rool that was pretty popular in Japan, so I'm assuming maybe that was the design that they were looking for, but I'm just not a big fan of the Pound King K. Rool. But at least they actually fucking used him. I have to give them credit. They actually used him. But this company is significant to talk about because they did make one main console game for Donkey Kong. And let me tell you what, it wasn't very good. No, see, next is Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. This was a racing game, sort of Donkey Kong's answer to Mario Kart, or sort of a semi-spiritual sequel to Diddy Kong Racing. But it wasn't nearly as good as any of those games. It was supposed to come out for the GameCube, and why don't you take a guess what it was supposed to use when it was originally going to come out for the GameCube? That's right, there's those bongos again. They're back, well, they were going to be back, and Nintendo decided to push this game to the Wii, which was their next console in line. This would actually be the demise of this game, because they didn't really do anything to it. They just ported it straight over and changed the controls from the bongos to the Wiimote and Nunchuck, confusingly, because the Wii was compatible with all GameCube controllers, including, well, you know. So why they chose not to leave that gimmick in there for this racing game is beyond me. No, instead, they just made you nunchuck all over the place, and the controls were bad, the graphics were pretty bad, everything about this game was just shit on. It did not get good reviews, and nobody liked it. And unfortunately, this would be the last official Donkey Kong game that we would actually see the Kremlings in, and most of the extended Kong family. Because, well, after that, they disappeared. We would get Donkey Kong back a few years later when Retro Studios would finally come along and change the series for the better, giving us a classic Donkey Kong platforming experience on the Wii. What a game. Donkey Kong Country Returns was sort of a pseudo-remake of the original Country from the SNES. It was a return to the classic platformer that a lot of fans loved from back in the day. Not only did Donkey Kong return for this game, as the title implies, but he actually brought other Kongs with him this fucking time. Diddy Kong and Cranky both appeared in this game, which was fitting, since they were both in the original game. Funky and Candy did not return, but hey, you gotta take what you can get. This game put DK back on his home island, though admittedly, it didn't look like Rare's DK Island anymore. No more Donkey Kong Head Mountain or any of that fun stuff. It was just kind of a plain old generic island with a big volcano in the middle. But hey, again, we got DK back and a platformer. I'll take it. But of course, there has to be a flaw, because if I learned anything as a Donkey Kong fan, you can't get everything that you want. And what was missing from this game? The Kremlings, of course. Donkey Kong's iconic villains were once again snubbed, and instead we got these Tiki enemies. The Tikis aren't the worst enemies I've ever seen, but again, why not just use the Kremlings? Why did Nintendo have to go through all this trouble to just keep not using them? Just blew my mind. Everything else about Returns was perfect, aside from the villains, in my opinion. And then we would get Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze on the Wii U, the follow-up, which, in my opinion, is nearly a perfect Donkey Kong Country game. Not only did we get DK and Diddy and Cranky back, who was playable this time, Funky came back, which was awesome, and Dixie Kong came back. Not only that, but David Weiss returned to the series to produce the music for Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. He hadn't done a DK game since Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest, and boy did he do one hell of a fucking soundtrack. Everything was coming up Joe. This game was nearly perfect, but of course, what do you think happened? The Kremlings were snubbed, yet again. This is the one thing that really stops Tropical Freeze from being the perfect Donkey Kong Country game. I mean, really. And the thing is, they were replaced with the Snowmans, who are Viking-themed animal people. Basically, what the Kremlings could have been, but you know. Again, it just seems like Nintendo was just trying their fucking hardest not to bring back King K. Rool and the Kremlings, which just confuses the shit out of me. Especially when you look at their leader, Lord Frederick, who literally looks like King K. fucking Rool. He's just a big, fat walrus. His boss fight also just rips off old moves from King K. Rool boss battles. So why not just bring back King K. Rool? Like I said, the one thing that stopped the game from being perfect. I don't hate the Snowmans. I actually think that they're, designed really well, and they're way better villains than the Tikis. But they're just not the Kremlings. I'm sure by now you're probably thinking to yourself, geez, Joe, you really love these fucking Kremlings. Why don't you just give it a rest already and forget about them? Well, it's hard for me to do that. It's hard for me to let go of villains that I just love since I was a kid. They were my favorite thing when I was little, and I just prefer them, that's all. I think they're really well designed, I think they're memorable and funny, and I just want to see them come back. I want to play a proper Donkey Kong game with his original villains on a current system. I mean, I don't think it's that much to ask, and I'm pretty confused as to why Nintendo just refuses to use them anyway, and I think a lot of other fans are too. The thing is I'm not alone in this. There's a lot of people that like the Kremlings, and there's a lot of people that love King K. Rool. I think that was proven enough when fans voted King K. Rool in the Smash Ultimate by way of the Smash Brothers ballot. Now, the ballot and King K. Rool getting in and all that is a discussion for another video, but it has to be mentioned here. I mean, what a day for Donkey Kong fans. I do think it's a little ridiculous that K. Rool wasn't already in Smash, because he certainly deserved to be, but whatever, we finally got him. And they updated his design and they made him look awesome. They fused together his old Rare design with his newer, more modern, fat design to make him just incredible. He's funny, he's cool looking, he's everything I could possibly ever want, and I'm really grateful that Nintendo and Sakurai put him into the game. But, I want to see him come back into the mainline Donkey Kong series. Which brings me to my next point. The Donkey Kong series is sort of on a slow return. We haven't gotten a new game since Tropical Freeze, which came out in 2014. Yeah, we got a port of Tropical Freeze to the Switch, but that's pretty much about it. Besides K. Rool showing up in Smash, that's all we've gotten so far of Donkey Kong. It's been 6 years, and I just want to see if a new Donkey Kong game is coming out. I don't know if Donkey Kong is ever going to be back to where it used to be. I really would love to see that, but I don't know. Nintendo has this weird thing with the Donkey Kong series. It almost seems like they want to forget about it, but at the same time they know that they can't forget about it because clearly it's popular enough that people care. I mean, they had no fucking clue King K. Rool was even a popular character until he got voted into the ballot. And on top of that, you know, again, Nintendo just doesn't really acknowledge the Donkey Kong series very much. Donkey Kong Country's 25th anniversary passed last November, and you didn't hear anything about it. Nintendo didn't even acknowledge it. Donkey Kong Country didn't get put onto the Switch yet for the SNES games, which I think is just a fucking crime. How can you not put the second best-selling game on the SNES on the Switch right now to play? But they just seem to give Donkey Kong the bare minimum all the time. It's like he's an afterthought, which is a real shame. Where the series came from and where the series is now is just two different things. I don't know. The future of the Donkey Kong series is just clouded, and I wish I knew where it was going, but I would love to see it return to the glory days, but who knows if that's going to happen or not. Thing is, I love the Donkey Kong series so much because it's just a cherished memory of me playing it when I was a kid. The beautiful thing about video games that not a lot of people understand is that they can invoke cherished memories from our childhoods, whether it's playing with a sibling or with friends or with parents. I mean, one of the memories that I remember most with Donkey Kong Country is playing it with my mom. It was one of the first games that I tried to beat on my own, and she tried to help me with it. And I'll always hold on to those memories. And seeing King K. Rool and the Kremlings and all that stuff, as weird as it sounds, rekindles those memories and just reminds me of good times. So I hope we're kind of in sort of a renaissance for Donkey Kong. I hope that Nintendo sees how much fans really love this series and they'll bring it back in full. I really do hope that we get a brand new Donkey Kong game with all the bells and whistles, his old enemies, and just give me all of it. I would love to see that. But hopefully we see something sooner than later. You know what, in the end, if Donkey Kong doesn't get anything, they can't take away the great moments that I had with the game, so there's always that. And you know, my Donkey Kong might be your Final Fantasy, or your Mario Bros, or your Halo, whatever game it is, it doesn't matter. Everybody has their favorite game series, everybody has something that they love, and everybody wants to see that game series continue on. So, hopefully you can see where I'm coming from at least, in every aspect. I know this video was really long and it was really preachy and, you know, bitchy, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, you know, thanks for subscribing, everybody. I'm really trying to make this a regular thing, and I'm really trying to make some interesting videos, so any feedback is greatly appreciated. Any support is greatly appreciated. Any shares or, you know, likes, comments, anything, dude. I love it. Just give me whatever you got. So, hopefully, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.